everyone. My name is Alex Smith. I'm the Chief HR Officer for the City of Memphis. And today I want to tell you about our story around culture change. To get us going, have any of you ever had a moment where you had this true kind of light bulb go off for you about what is going on in your organization? Have any of you ever had this moment where you clearly understood what needed to happen next? The moment that I'm talking about is what I call a moment of truth. So when I started at the City of Memphis in January of 2016, I truly had this awakening moment in my first 30 days being the new Chief HR Officer for the City of Memphis. And it all started with this orange folder right here. So starting with the city, coming into public sector, after being in private sector for over 15 years, I truly was excited, and I had talked with, at the time, Mayor Strickland about how I could help with attracting and retaining talent for the City of Memphis. And in fact, when I went through my interview process with him in December of 2015, one of the main things we talked about was how we could look at making a difference in bringing private sector practices for HR and organizational development and design into public sector, having a new approach to how we thought about city government. So being a new chief, a new HR leader for the organization, and really the first ever chief HR officer for the city, I had ambitious 90-day plan about what I wanted to do to help truly attract and retain talent for the city and really shift the city into the 21st century in terms of its talent management practices. So I get there, and the first 2 weeks that I'm there, I start acclimating myself to City Hall, meeting employees, having one-on-ones, finding where the bathroom is, all the basic things that you do with your first 30 days. And one day, while I came into the office, my administrative assistant passed me this orange folder, the folder you see right here. So she passes this folder to me, and I'm like, what is this? And she's like, oh, this is our folder that we use to share information and for you to sign off on compensation related items. And really any kind of employment changes that need to happen in our system. And I knew at the time we had an on-premise HR system. So I said, okay. And so tell me a little bit more about what's in this folder. And she said, okay, so every compensation or employment change that happens as the director of HR or personnel, you have to sign off on any change that an employee makes. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I take the folder, I open it, and I see this trifold sheets of paper. And essentially is a sheet of paper that has the employee's name, their information, and the change they would like to make. And I see at the bottom the area for my signature. So I open the folder, I look at it, it looks okay. So I sign it and move on. So I come back. The next day, I have another orange folder in my inbox. So I take the orange folder, I open it. This time I had about 20 sheets of paper in there with that of the trifold sheets of paper. And I see that there's different address changes, compensation changes, etc. I was like, okay, this looks okay. So I look at the bottom and I sign, close the folder, get back to business. Then the next week I come to work. Another yellow folder. This time there are 30 sheets of paper in it, similar things. And this time I take a closer look at the paper. So I see that not only is there an area for me to sign, but there's an area for the supervisor to sign, the director for the division to sign, my signature, and then also our COO to sign as well. And that's when it hit me. This folder that not only is coming to my office, but it actually had to circulate to 4 different offices. So you had 4 different levels of management and leadership that had to sign off just for an employee to change their address. And so that's when I had this moment of truth. Wait a minute. So we're spending more time signing sheets of paper, and we actually are employing people to walk a folder around for them to sign off on someone to change their address, instead of spending our time focused on the things that are most important for our employees and for our customers, which are the citizens of Memphis. So right then, I brought our team together and I said, wait a minute, we've got to change. How is it that we can focus on the things that are the most important when we're spending so much time on these manual processes? So right then and there, I challenged our team to go paperless. And I challenged them with what I called Operation No Paper. So I challenged our team to find ways to go paperless by December of 2020. And this was a truly revolutionary idea, because in city government, it's always been focused on, here's how we've always done it. We've been doing it this way for over decades or over many years. And so the idea that we could actually do something different and unlock the potential in the organization was transformational. So today I want to talk about our process for how we went through our transformational change as an organization, and going from being very manual focused, and I would say even silo driven in our approach to HR and how we looked at problems as an organization, to how we now today have this very innovative and collaborative approach, results-oriented approach in how we do business. So an important component in our journey, first of all, it was the recognition that we needed to have a mandate to change and stating that clearly as a leader. But the most secondary important part was, how do we fund this? So it's one thing for you to say you want to change, is another thing for you to make investment in changing. And so an important component here was looking at where we could locate funds so that we could make changes. And this was an important partnership with other divisions like our IT division, our finance division, in terms of looking at how we could make significant investments in both our technology infrastructure, as well as in other key important tools and resources that could be helpful for our employees. So one of the first interesting meetings that we had was, how could we go from this on-premise solution to a cloud-based solution? And that was a very detailed conversation, because it was something that we have never embarked on as an organization before, which was going to the cloud. So there was a number of discussions, not only about how could we afford it, but also how could we resource it properly so that we could have people who really have day-to-day jobs. How could we get them to be able to free up capacity to be able to do this work? So that was the most important piece. And so creating the burning platform, we were able to get the city council to invest in new technology and to support us in creating some new roles in the organization, which led to the next important thing, which is establishing the team. So from there, we were able to establish a team that focused in on helping to ensure that we had this innovation to happen in the organization. And in particular, I want to point you to, we established an equity, diversity, and inclusion team, which was critical in our ability to be able to think through how we could look at employee engagement and overall diversity and inclusion for the organization for the first time ever for the City of Memphis. We also established an HR operations team, which in other organizations would call it an HRIS team, which focused in on how we could develop solutions and analytics to best support our organization and our go forward approach. And once we put this team in place, it's amazing the waterfall of information and strategies that came about. The team really needed someone to have a vision. And more importantly, they need someone who could really unleash them so that they could dream in colors, that they could really take a hold of some of the ideas that they've had for years and being able to make them happen. And so by challenging them, by giving them the resources needed, establishing the right teams and focus, we were able to get a lot of things done. And so we saw 4 years of straight innovation coming from our team in every single area from having this critical setup. And so 2016, pioneering work in terms of our professional development and our retiree and compensation benefits. In 2017, pioneering work in terms of offering a student loan contribution program. 2018, pioneering efforts related to not only our cloud implementation and actually finalizing that, but then coming up with other ways that we can engage and support employees as well, and so forth in 2019. And so this really is a story of when you set that vision, when you provide the resources and you have the team, you really can see true cultural innovation happen within the organization. Now, how did we get here? So I know I told you all these great results and this kind of cascading of a moment of truth happening and how all of this innovation happened. But let me tell you about us at the City of Memphis and how this all started. So with any organization, when you want to see change happen, when you want to spark innovation, the first thing that has to happen is you have to have a leader that supports. And so in 2015, when Mayor Strickland won, which if you think about the mayor role as a CEO role, when Mayor Strickland won, he set a clear mandate to us as the leadership team that he wanted us to be brilliant at the basics and creating plans and ideas that can make a difference in how we serve Memphians in the work that we do. In fact, in our first ever executive retreat that we had in December of 2015, we came up with this very important purpose statement, which really set the foundation for everything else that we did, which was all around making life better for Memphians every day. But in order to get there, there are a few important pieces that we had to address up front. And so another important moment of truth that I had was in actually interviewing for the role and conducting my research on the organization. I found some critical things that helped give me insight into what was needed to set us up for success in terms of being brilliant at the basics and helping Mayor Strickland really embolden and realize his vision for the city. So in my research, one of the important things that I noticed is that we had an employee morale challenge as an organization coming in. And that was due to some austerity measures that were put in place due to some pension funding mandates that came down from the state. And so what happened is once the city put those austerity measures in place, it created a sense of morale challenges and frustration and just flat out anger from our employee base at the time in 2015, which ultimately led to part of the reason led to Strickland actually winning the election. So let me tell you about the cycle that I researched and really became clear to me in my moment of truth. So when those austerity measures went into place, first thing that happened is a decline in morale and engagement. And then we saw a decline in city customer service delivery, which led to a decline in public perception and city overall effectiveness and accountability, which led to population loss, ultimately declining in tax revenue, creating more city budget constraints, leading to an overall cycle of more austerity measures and compensation challenges for the city. So we truly were in a cycle where if we did not impact this, it was going to create a problem in our ability to truly be able to unlock the potential of the organization. And so let me give you some concrete numbers about what I'm talking about. So I know some of you are very quantitative driven and numbers oriented. So in 2015, if you went on Glassdoor, we had a 2.5 rating out of 5. There was a 40% likelihood of people to recommend us as an employer. The CEO or when the mayor at the time had a 32% approval rating. And when we did our first employee engagement study, we discovered that we had 50% engagement, which means that we really only had about half the population that was fully engaged in their work or somewhat engaged in their work. And so my summary and my understanding of these issues, after having this moment of truth about this cycle, in my first interview with the mayor, I talked to him about how HR could make a true impact in these areas. And I talked about it in 4 important ways: culture, organizational design, talent management, and HR systems. And why is this important? First, starting with culture. If you want to make a change in an organization, you have to first and foremost hone in on the behaviors you want to see. And that is getting to the underpinning around culture. So you can't expect to have any change in an organization unless you are thinking about culture. As many of you probably know the quote, culture eats strategy for lunch any day. And so you have to think through how you want to impact the culture in order to make a difference, which, kind of going back to my first conversation about our executive retreat, it was so important that we aligned under the same purpose statement, so that at the end of the day, when we could talk about how we want to shift the culture and the underpinning of how we wanted people to start thinking about city government differently, getting back to that core of our purpose statement of why we are here, to improve the quality of life of Memphians every day, was absolutely important in lifting us into the culture change that we wanted to see as an organization. The next component to that was related to organizational structure. And so one of the most pivotal things that the mayor did, in addition to us setting up and bringing in new perspectives in the organization, is that he was really thoughtful about bringing in different types of leaders into the organization to help with the culture change that he wanted to see. So not only hiring someone like me, who truly is a private sector HR person coming into a public sector HR role, but he also hired individuals coming from the military, coming from the private sector, in law firms and in media organizations, bringing different backgrounds, people from the West Coast, East Coast, Memphis, and having a number of different perspectives coming into his main senior leadership team and cabinet. The other important thing is that when we met as an executive team in our first retreat, we talked about the values that we wanted to see. And there were 4 main values that came out: collaboration, innovation, accountability, and service. And so particularly around collaboration, in order to role model that behavior, one of the most important things that we decided as a team is that we would meet every Friday for 3 hours every week to be able to talk about the most important issues across the city and be able to problem solve, decide, and commit together as a team. And why was that important? So as the most senior executive team in the organization, having the commitment to meet, to decide and commit, most importantly, to role model the behavior of collaboration and accountability, was really important in reinforcing and continuing the importance of the change that we wanted to see in the organization. So it was very important. Not only did we walk the walk, but we also spoke the talk and really led from the front in terms of how we wanted to see people behave in the organization. And so with all of that, many years meeting every Friday, having our organizational team bringing new perspectives in, having a whole new way of thinking about not only culture, but our talent management systems, even putting in new approaches to how we think about overall processes in city government, we made a ton of change. But then, there were some very interesting moments throughout our time where we understood that you continue to have things that we had to work on. So let me tell you this story. So one of the most important things that I talked to my team about was looking for opportunities where we could make a difference, where we could make change. And so one area that our compensation team identified was our carryover vacation process. At the time, if you wanted to carry over vacation as an employee, you had to submit a form, which is the form you see before you. And you had to submit it by a certain deadline. And not only did your immediate supervisor have to sign it, your division directors had to sign it, and then I would have to sign it. Once again, kind of going back to this, everyone having to sign in order for a change to happen. And so our team said, you know what, we can really automate this and create an online form. And so we had success in automating other processes. We had just wrapped up a first phase of our Oracle implementation in terms of going to the cloud. So the team was feeling really prepared and excited about initiating this new change with the carryover vacation form. So what happened? We went through our change management steps. We received buy-in from the division. We automated the form. We tested the automation. We launched it. It was successful. We were really excited about being able to automate this process that had been really a burden to many in the organization to have to carry out every year. So the next day, after we have our launch and we're so excited and everything, I come to the office and guess what I see in my inbox? I see a printed copy of the online form we created for this vacation carryover process in my inbox. What was fascinating about that is the team had gone through all of this effort to put this form online, and we went through all the change management steps. But even with that, the division said to us, well, we weren't really sure if this new process was going to work. So we went ahead and filled it out online. And then we took a printed screenshot of what we filled out online and sent it in the mail just in case, almost defeating the entire purpose of the whole process. And I sat there and I was just honestly just shocked. It really, and somewhat sad, because it's like, oh my goodness, I thought we had gotten past this, we had innovated in so many ways, but yet they literally did double the work just to make sure that this process is right, because they weren't sure. And so that's when I realized that it was really important that we continue to adapt. And that although we had gone through all the change management steps, there was something that was missed in our communication, and that you can never communicate enough. Also, that people didn't necessarily have faith in all the change that we were making, and they were deeply entrenched and embedded in the change of the processes and the ways of what they were used to. And so we were going to have to just keep working at it. It didn't mean that we stopped. It didn't mean that we were defeated. It just meant that we had to continue to work. And the team and I continue to work through that. I'm proud to say today that we have completely automated carryover vacation. So we don't have a form at all anymore. And so we were able to get there. But you just have to continue to work at it. So I want to cue this video to share with you, my overall perspective about culture change. I think it'll give us some good insight in our overall experience.
Change management is very important. I can tell you that yes, there were people that were very resistant, and even today still resistant to some of the changes that we made. But as we've been able to get wins, so for example, as we've been able to improve our recruiting processes, we've been able to improve our wellness incentives and other things that they care about, they see how technology and our process improvements really can benefit them, and we've been able to solicit champions from there. So it has been good, and I can tell everyone that regardless of the demographics of a team, you can't give up on a team.
Sure.
And that change is possible with any team if you set the right vision and you have the right commitment.
And so that was an interview that I did talking about the change that occurred at the City of Memphis. And the most important part is that you cannot give up. You cannot give up on change. And so I wanted to talk to you about the results that we received. So all of the innovation, all of the change you went through as a senior leadership team within the organization, I'm proud to say that we were able to actually make the cover of Workforce Magazine, really providing a hallmark to us that we were showing something different about what can be done in municipal government, and that change really can happen. We saw this as an important celebration of win. But also from a results standpoint, just to give you an overview of kind of where we are. In 2019, if you went on Glassdoor, you saw that we had a 3.5 rating. So we went from 2.5 to 3.5. The likelihood to recommend went from the 40% number to 68%. The CEO approval rating went from the 38% number to 91% for our mayor. And then our employee engagement survey results went up from 50% to 75%. And so seeing these numbers and actually writing them on the whiteboard, it was another moment of truth for me that change is possible. And that if you stick with it, if you stay focused, if you fund it properly, if you have the right team, all of those things make a huge difference in you being able to see the results. But you've got to work at it and you've got to stick with it. It is absolutely possible. And of course, the most important result is that Mayor Strickland was reelected with 62% of the vote. So when your CEO gets told, yep, you can keep doing the work, in this case, when the mayor is reelected, it was a huge win for us as an organization and let us know that we really are on the right path as well. But I also want to make a note that, adaptation continues to be important. And one of the most critical things, as we have experienced COVID, and I wanted to share this with the audience, that, our team has had to continue to adapt and evolve as different challenges have arisen. And so COVID-19 has been nothing different for us in terms of looking at how we can work together as a team, brainstorm, collaborate, innovate to best support our employees. And so one of the most interesting things about the innovation from our team is still keeping to the heart of how do we make life better for Memphians every day. And from our standpoint, the way to make life better for Memphians during COVID was to make sure that we were supporting employees who were supporting our citizens. And so we developed a number of different policies, knowledge and information, and innovative programs to do that. In fact, two of the most innovative things that we came up with last year that I'm so proud of, one is that we did our own internal contact tracing. We were able to have employees trained by the health department and be able to facilitate phase 1 contact tracing internally to help employees. And two, we partnered with a local nonprofit to offer on-site virtual student learning hubs so that our employees could continue to come to work and have support from us, but make sure that their students, that their children were okay. And so we added that in. And then I also want to say, lastly, one of the really interesting ideas that came up from our team was providing COVID-19 care kits. So for every employee that's diagnosed positive, we actually send home a care kit with a soup and instructions on how to care for themselves while they are quarantined or in isolation. And that has been a really just nice touch in terms of helping to support employees to the next level. And that was an idea that came from one of our leaders that has been a shining light for us as we supported employees through COVID. And so to wrap this all up in summary, if I could tell you the top 6 things to put in place and to be thinking about in terms of culture change for your organization being in government. So number 1, set a clear vision. Be really clear about what you're going to go after and why it's important. One of the things I talked about at the very beginning is, I set the expectation around Operation No Paper, making it really clear that I wanted us to go paperless. And I am so excited that I did that because I didn't know that COVID was happening. But because we had all of the automation in place, because we had the information and access to our teams related to how to have more innovative and automated approaches, that made a huge difference in our ability to innovate and serve employees when it came time for COVID. So it definitely made a difference in terms of our productivity and being able to help position ourselves to support. So setting that vision, even though you may not know the full ramifications, that can make a huge difference. The next component is around outcomes first. And so being really clear about what you're trying to go after. Why is it important? But what are the outcomes you're looking for? We were really clear that we wanted to serve employees better so that they could serve citizens. And so coming up with programs that could help meet the needs of our employees, that could better serve them, improving our customer service as an organization to ensure that our employees could be able to focus in on the things that matter the most. It's really important, and making a huge difference. if the question is, what has been your largest challenge to get member buy-in? I would say that, to get member buy-in, it has been about helping them understand best practices and also that this can work. I think in many times people get very entrenched of saying, we've always done it this way. We've always, proceeded with this certain process, or we've used this certain technology, and to give this idea that, oh, it can be done differently and you can do it differently and have success, has been the biggest challenge. But once we've achieved wins, as I talked about in the video, once we achieved wins, people started to become convinced that it's possible that we could do things differently and we could approach it in a different way and get even better results than what they had before. The next component in terms of culture change is around investment. And as I talked about, you have to make investment not only in your people in terms of selecting and hiring individuals, but also in training and development as well. And I didn't talk a lot about that, but the investment in your team, your people, and of course the financial investment, also investment in different tools and resources, all of that's important. One of the most important things that we changed very early on was increasing the tuition reimbursement amount so that individuals could have more of an incentive to be able to go back to school. But also within the HR division, I fully supported professional development, conferences, seminars, certifications, encouraging people to take time while at work to be able to improve their capability. That type of investment makes a huge difference, not only in people having exposure in terms of what other organizations are doing, but also in building their confidence as well in terms of their knowledge and skill set and professional development, in addition to making an investment in the technology and being able to provide upgrades where you can. And I know in government that is hard, but there are ways and approaches in which you can do that in terms of looking at multi-year programs that can make a difference there. And then, of course, making an investment in the tools that can be needed to help employees as well. The next component is around being adaptable and flexible. So it's really important to know that change is not linear. It doesn't go exactly the way you planned it. It will ebb and flow. You'll have peaks and valleys, and you do have to be adaptable and flexible along the way to be able to to do that, and that can make a huge difference. If the question is, what are some of the cost savings that we were able to achieve by implementing a program like this? One of my favorite statistics is when we implemented our retiree private exchange, we actually were able to reduce our OPEB liability by over $300 million. And so that is one example of around cost savings that we were able to achieve. Also, with our healthcare plans, in becoming more innovative around our wellness and more proactive care in terms of how we approach our employees, having on-site biometrics and things like that, we were able to stabilize our healthcare cost trend by keeping it around 5% per year, which is really a major achievement when you look at public sector and city government. So we definitely saw important cost savings in different ways as we innovated in our programs, and of course being adaptable, flexible along the way, learning about how the best way to do different things. And then the last component, celebrating wins. I think, it's important that, when you achieve a win, when you're able to, be able to launch a program, when you're able to see success with the program in terms of your hiring or in terms of whatever the metrics are the most important to you, you celebrate that. When we launched into the cloud, we had a celebration with that. When our team was able to cut down our hiring, going from 120 days to hire to under 75 days to hire, we celebrated that. When we were able to implement new changes successfully, we celebrated those things. And having that type of celebration is so important so that employees are encouraged and excited by what you're doing. And also it helps spark innovation as well, because people see that success and then they want to try it themselves in terms of how they can be successful. And then the last component that I can highly recommend in terms of the top 6 for cultural change is about being resilient and kind of going back to being adaptable and flexible and just not giving up. It may be difficult. You may have years where funding is cut or there may be some other challenges. Certainly COVID, I think, has taught all of us the importance of resiliency and just sticking with it and adapting as we need to. That's the biggest lesson learned. And if you're looking to change culture within government, is you've got to stick with it. You've got to stay with it, and you definitely will see results happen. So that is our story. That is the city of Memphis. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, you can certainly reach out to me on any social media outlets. And I really want to thank the Government Performance Summit for the opportunity to share the City of Memphis story. And I'm happy to entertain any questions. Thank you so much.